I wanted to welcome everybody to today's webinar. Ubermedia is now near, and I'll turn it over to Evan in just a minute, but a little bit of housekeeping. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation. And if you have any questions, please submit them in chat, and Evan and team will answer those at the end of the presentation. Thank you. And here's Evan.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kathy. And thanks for everyone attending and being on time. We wanted to start this right basically at the top of the hour, at the bottom of the hour, because the presentation should be about 25-30 minutes. We wanted to leave time for ample questions, should there be any. So please do submit them in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation, and we can go back and look at any slide after this. These slides will be available after this, as well as the recording. So if you want to see anything, we're happy to do it. And we're excited to jump into a topic that is probably new to you. It is less new to us, but it's all about us being near, and also innovations we're working on in the space of tourism research, tourism advertising, attribution. So we'll jump into honestly a lot of topics. We'll review some things you may have seen variations of before, and we'll review some brand new things you may never have heard of. But very excited to introduce our tourism team, who will be presenting on all topics today, or more importantly, people you've either talked with before or will be talking to after this call. Many of you know me. I'm Evan Saunders. Been at Ubermedia now near for over just about 3 years, and I live and breathe the world of tourism here. I'm based in Boston, although I used to do a lot of traveling, and I'm looking forward to more traveling in the near future. I'll pass it over to Evelina.
Hi, everybody. Like I said, great to see some familiar faces, those who have popped onto camera, and then those who have showed up today. Very excited to be connecting with all of you again. So I'm Evelina Jang. I'm the VP of Analytics and Data Solutions. I've been working with a lot of you to develop what the tourism data sets look like today. And I'm excited to talk to you all more about what we're doing in the tourism space, as Evan mentioned. So good to see everybody.
Awesome. Kelsey, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I've probably met all of you before, but I am newer to NEAR. Been here for about 4 months, and I'm based in Indianapolis. Big fan of TTRA, and I'm very excited to have you guys hear from Evelina, Evan, and Laura today. And I'm always here to answer any questions.
Awesome. Simon, why don't you, Simon, yeah.
Thanks, Evan. So yeah, this is Simon Caballero. I am a tourism data specialist here at NEAR. Work really closely with Evan on the sales side of things, and I am based out of Los Angeles, not too far from our world headquarters in Pasadena.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Take us out, Laura.
Thanks. I'm just realizing now that it has only my first name, so like Madonna. Like, just call me Laura. But I've actually been with the company for 10 years. I ran the advertising operations team for several of those, and ran several campaigns. So I'm very familiar with using our mobile location data for marketing and executing those campaigns. So my responsibility now is just educating our clients on how you can use that data for your marketing plans. So
awesome. And I think honestly, at your 10-year anniversary at our company, you can go by just Laura moving forward. I think you've earned that with that. So a lot of people have never heard of NEAR before. NEAR's been around for over 8 years. And I'll kind of walk through a bit really quickly about what has changed or not changed, honestly. But NEAR brought with them data on about 1.6 billion people around the world, a huge focus on privacy with this data, and new sort of products and solutions to leverage our understanding of essentially bridging online data with offline data. We'll talk a little bit about this, but the general understanding is NEAR has an incredible database of what online behaviors and offline behaviors are, and able to connect the dots amongst those 1.6 billion people around the world. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's what NEAR brings to the table. However, I thought it would be fun to just quickly highlight in a fairly boring looking slide essentially what's changed as part of Ubermedia being NEAR. But again, a little bit of background, we merged with them in April. Near was founded in 2012. We were just founded about 2 years before that. Near's headquartered in Singapore and Los Angeles and has offices all over the world, from Sydney to Tokyo to Bangalore to Paris. And we're excited to join their team and with them combine our resources. So really quick, the number one question I got was what changes? And honestly, I keep saying nothing really. But we do have more data, we have more support, and almost more importantly, more international support for our international tourism clients. We have more unique data sets, which we're actually going to walk through today and talk about what some of those look like. And then we have more advertising and attribution offerings, which Laura is going to walk you through. Again, this is going to be a really, really quick walkthrough. So post your questions and we'll answer them at the end. As I mentioned, still the same great access to data that we've always had. Now our data goes back over 7 years. We've combined Near's data with our data. So we just have essentially a larger global data set that now comes from over 250,000 apps around the world. That number fluctuates sort of on a month-to-month basis, but pretty robust. We're really proud of the access to data that we have now that we've joined with Near. Furthermore, we're really proud of the focus on privacy that Near has. Benoit Grouchko is Near's global privacy officer. He's based in Paris, France, as part of our offices there, but of course, essentially puts his stamp of approval on the collection of our data, ensuring it's GDPR and CCPA compliant, as well as staying ahead of any new regulations that might come out. So he has no association with the sales team in a good way, and it absolutely ensures that everything is compliant when it comes to any regulation, honestly, around the world, which again, we really, really pride ourselves on. We love protecting privacy as part of this data and ensuring it stays essentially on our shoulders and that none of our clients have to worry about anything privacy related because we get to worry about everything privacy related. Global access to data is something we're really, really proud about. This is just a snapshot of visitors to Empire State Building in 2019. I just chose that hoping it would show a lot of data for people around the world, even though it's a small location. It's a well-known location. And of course, it lights up the world from where people are coming from. So we've only added on to our global reach. And since then, our company actually works with a lot of international tourism destinations as well. So we've only essentially seen more data over time. And this includes the past 6 to 9 months. I know a lot of people have heard about people opting out of iOS, certain apps that share, some apps they do, some apps they don't. We've heard a lot of hearsay. We've heard, honestly, a lot of opinions. I sometimes equate it to opinions around COVID and vaccines because we're a data company and we want to focus on the data and the facts. And essentially some key facts we've seen here is that our data has only increased year over year and since January 1st. And in fact, we've only seen an increase in the global share of iOS devices that we have. These are real facts and I hope they speak for themselves. It's important to know that we always see data fluctuating. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. And yes, we believe people are opting out of sharing their data on iOS devices. However, as part of both Ubermedia and Near, and now exclusively Near, we really specialize in working with app providers that explicitly ask for consent in sharing your location and explicitly really require your location in order to use the app. So we pride ourselves on those 2 points, and that's one of the reasons we haven't seen a decline in iOS devices as part of our app database. This is something we're going to continue to monitor. If you have any questions on this, of course, happy to answer them, even outside of this. At the same time, we'll be updating these facts as we go forward. And again, I just encourage everyone on the call to believe data behind this because the data and the facts will always speak for themselves, good or bad, when it comes to that. And we completely live and breathe data sets. That's what our company thrives in. So what I'm going to do right here is just show some examples for those especially new to Near/Ubermedia, how we take data sets to then answer specific questions. And then I'm going to pass it and show you some different examples of data sets. I'm going to pass it over to Evelina to then walk through some new innovations that we're working on in the world of mobile location data here. So the example we're going to talk about today is Christopher Street Day in Berlin, Germany. We did this work over the summer I found it personally very interesting, and it's a good showcase of our different data sets. This is how mobile location data starts. This is a screenshot of Excel, not very anything exciting for some people, exciting for I guess people like me. Column A right there, that's Berlin. Column B, those are all anonymized device IDs. So you'll see some of them repeat, because what we're learning here is column C and D, where is that phone? And column F and G, when is that phone in that location? So essentially what you're looking at here is phones giving off their location around the city of Berlin. So when we look at that parade route, we can essentially visualize phones giving off their location along the parade route. So this is early morning right here. But as we get a little bit more in the afternoon, late morning, these are people who specifically attended the parade. So we geofence that parade route. We're seeing their phones give off the location before and after they're attending the parade. And of course, as they disperse after. That's essentially how mobile location data starts. But it's also important to add context to all of this. And that's another thing our company really loves to do and specializes in. Taking those latitude and longitudinal pings and literally adding context to them. And column B right here is what you can see is where we've taken people who attended this route, this parade, and replaced the latitude and longitude with actual locations, what we call polygons. And that's column B right here. So no longer do you see GPS coordinates, you see literally locations. So we can understand people who attend this parade, what hotels did they stay at? Obviously, did they go to a Starbucks or Apple store? We can build other attractions in there. And of course, columns D and E, we can see a timestamp of when these phones were seen in these locations. So this is the human movement side of our data that can be used to answer a multitude of questions. We then look to understand, where are these devices from? And we provide another data set that answers that question. And here's just, again, a screenshot of Excel from what a data set looks like that answers the question, the people who attended this parade route, where are they from? So column B, again, unique devices right there. And then you'll see a multitude of international attendees to this event. Column C is the country they're from. F is the city they're from within that country. J is the postal code they're from. There's some other columns in there. We try to add context depending on the country that the device is coming from. But again, I just went through a really, really fun exercise to understand how local is this event. So taking Excel, I did nothing very exciting here. I just did a pivot table to understand what percentage of devices were from Germany. So 25% of the devices we saw were not from Germany. Felt that was fairly touristy of an event. And then I looked at, well, what percentage of those devices were from Berlin? And I saw almost 2/3 of those, the German devices were from Berlin. This is great. We love using the data to answer these questions. Sometimes it's hard to answer a question in a vacuum. So for example, we just looked at what percentage of these devices are from Berlin when it comes to German devices. I don't know if that's high or low unless I compare it to another event or another location. So it is fun to do event analyses or just look at what's happened in July 2021, but it's also good to compare to other events or other timeframes to understand what's high and what's low. It's all relative at the end of the day. Of course, over the past year, we have a very unique data set in tourism, which is by far our #1 requested data set. It is also my favorite data set, and I've highlighted a few things. This will be sort of my last slide before I hand it over to Adelina. If you would like a sample of this data set I'm about to show you, I'm happy to send it to you because it is a lot of fun to play around with. We call this the origin market with length of stay data set. Very literal of what it is. And I've highlighted some columns and rows here for you. So you've seen this before. Column A right here is visiting column B, which is Memphis, Tennessee. And we learn where are these phones from, which is column E through I. Cool, I can see where the phone is from, the census block group, the zip code, the metro area. But what I learned for each device and each trip it takes to Memphis is when the trip started, when it ended, its duration, whether it's a day trip or overnighter. So again, I'm going through this quickly, but just to highlight rows 3 through 7 right there, that is the same phone. That is the same person making 5 trips to Memphis. In column I can see that person is from Knoxville. In column L, I can see all their trips started in August. In column Q, I can see all their trips ended in August. And in column U, I can see the duration of the trip. That's in seconds. You round up to to hours or days, but more importantly, column V makes it really easy for me to understand if it was a day trip or an overnighter. And so we use this to understand day trippers versus overnighters versus length of stay based on origin market. I have a lot of fun with this data set. I know a lot of our partners have fun with this data set. And if you, again, want a free sample of this, I'd love to send it over because you can open it in Excel even. So with that, I'll pass it over to Evelina to go beyond the basics with our data.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, so Evan just went through what we have essentially called our basics, what you can do with human mobility data, with mobile data, and in understanding the who, the where are they coming from, what are they doing within the destination. That's really become some of our bread and butter. What we want to do now is talk about what we are going to do beyond that. What have we been R&Ding, and also what has this merger with Near also enabled us to offer to our tourism clients. And so first, what I wanted to showcase today is something that we've been working on since the beginning of the pandemic in looking at relocation data. So at the beginning of the pandemic, many of you heard and probably even saw within your destinations, especially if you have an urban destination, that many people were moving out of places that have had high rents, or they can now work from home and they don't necessarily need to work in the area or live in the area that they work. San Francisco definitely was in the spotlight around this, as a lot of the tech companies and the workers at the tech companies allowed them to work from home. And so many of them decided that they will work from home and probably outside of San Francisco. So what we've been able to do at Near is, since we have data from the last 7 years, and since we have been creating common evening locations on a monthly basis, storing that within our database now allows us to look at how has common evening locations changed within an area. So what residents are coming into an area and who is moving out of the area. And so we developed a data set that allows us to look at this. And in this visual here, what you see on the left is the outflow of residents from San Francisco County. So this darker red area is where you're seeing the highest percent of residents move out of San Francisco County. And overall, we saw that about 32% of residents, people we have common evening locations for, had a change in their common evening location that was outside of San Francisco County. And that's compared to just 1.9% in 2019. So for destinations, this allows them to understand, okay, what areas are seeing changes? What areas do I need to keep a little bit more of an eye out on? Because we know migration patterns have an effect on job opportunities. It has an effect on the cultural vibrancy of an area. So understanding what area is changing is important. Then on the other end, we do still see residents moving in to areas. And so while you can look at outflow of visitors, or outflow of residents, you can also look at inflow of residents as well. So on the other side here, the green side, the green map here, this is where we're showing where are they moving into. And so you see this the middle darker green areas where we're seeing a lot of people moving into those areas. And we're able to see what zip codes they're moving from. And so from that, you can understand how the San Francisco area, or the area you're looking at, how that composition changes, so that you can market to the new residents that are in there, or even change your marketing to more reflect what is changing in the area. This data set also, because with our common evening location, many of our clients are using it against connecting that to segmentation data. So in this case, we had done an analysis with Esri tapestry data, and we were able to see that there was a big change in terms of the composition or the segments that are coming in. So previously in the on the left-hand side, what we were seeing was a lot of the trendsetters. It was, I think there are segments called lattes and laptops, so people reflecting the tech industry. And what we see with the inflow, this darker green area, is that more people who have families are moving in. So segments that are relating to families are moving into these areas. So that's the new relocation data set. If anybody would like a sample of that, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to provide that information. So another thing that's coming down the pipeline is estimating tourism visitor volumes. Now, this is a capability that we've had already in looking at all visitors to a location, especially since I know a lot of you know that we are in the retail and commercial real estate sector. So being able to estimate visitor volumes has always been a hot question. It's something that we have followed the industry in terms of how they do extrapolation. It isn't the strongest way to do extrapolation. It's really looking at building a panel and then looking at the percentage of smartphone users in the country and doing an extrapolation based off of that. It's very simple. What we've been working on in the last year and a half is really a more sophisticated way of doing extrapolations. We were very careful in introducing this and when we want to introduce this and how sophisticated we want to be with this, because we know that estimating visitor volumes is very important, especially in the tourism industry. And so we wanted to make sure that it's tried and true before we come out with it. And so how are we doing this in a more sophisticated manner? So what we've developed on our end is an observability metric. So we're only including devices that have the highest number of device pings, not only the highest number of device pings, but the highest number of device pings in locations, in retail or specific retail or attractions or parks. So it's not merely that they're giving off location pings, but they're actually being seen in at specific locations. We also have developed a panel that is one of the largest out there. So our panel is going to be consisting of 40 million devices, and the panel is going to be able to respond to the increases and decreases in our data, and is representative of the countries that we will have. And then finally, taking all of these ingredients, we also are developing a baseline on a localized baseline that looks at not only what's happening nationally, but what's happening within the location or in the destination as well. So taking all three of those variables, we've created an estimation model, and then from there we'll also expand it so that we will also be able to look at not only just all visitors, but breaking down to tourists as well. Finally, what I also want to showcase today is a product that Near also brings to the table with our acquisition. So Carbon is a product that Near has had already. And what Carbon does is it takes us beyond the data that we have already, and it allows us to look at your first party data. And so destinations can get insights from our data sets, but they can also gain insights about the people that they're emailing, the people that they're reaching out to through mobile advertising. So what we do is we have a way of resolving identities together called Proxima. And through resolving those identities, we're able to also connect them to what their interests are, their demographics, their brand affinity, dwell time or length of stay, all very familiar things that you can get within our data sets, but now with your first party data. So if we look at specifically what you can look at You are able to dive into the common evening, common daytime locations. You can see the brand affinity as you see here. So these are some of the metrics that you would be able to attach to your first party data using our carbon product. Now, what are you going to do with all of this information and all of this new data that you have on your visitors? Well, here I have Laura to help us dive into that.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So now you have all this data. I'm going to talk about how you can advertise and measure against that. Great. Thank you. Okay. So there's 3 ways that we can help you activate against this data. The first is we can create custom audiences, and I'll go into that in a lot more detail in just a moment. Secondly, we can serve ads to those custom audiences that we've created. And third, we can actually measure the effectiveness of it. So great, we spent a bunch of money, we served a bunch of ads. Did anyone actually visit our destination? Yes or no? So we can help with that piece as well. So first, let's talk about, oh, sorry, go back. I want to stick on this slide for a second. First, I want to talk about creating custom audiences and really diving deep into some examples that I've seen other marketers use that have been really successful. So the first one is just very generically creating sort of a traveler audience. So we can look at devices that we've observed in airports or hotels. So we know that they are out and about and traveling currently. We can also then layer in what origin market they're from. So if you have a particular set of origin markets that you're wanting to target specifically, you can say, okay, we know that they live in those 5 to 10 markets, whatever they may be. And we know we've seen them out and about because we've observed them in airports and hotels recently. Secondly, another audience that I've seen created frequently is creating an audience based on visitors to particular cultural attractions. So I actually have a colleague who is an expert in marketing for cultural attractions, and he always says people who go to cultural attractions go to cultural attractions. So in other words, if we've observed someone in a museum, they're a great candidate to show an ad to for your particular museum and your destination. Thirdly is events. So with all these custom audiences, the time frame is completely flexible. So like with that parade that Evan mentioned, we can create an audience of those device IDs that we saw at that parade. We don't even have to have had that boundary drawn at the time of the event. We can do that all in real time. So if you say, hey, Laura, we had a restaurant week last year, it was really successful. We want to retarget the people that visited that restaurant week with advertising for this year's restaurant week. Great. All I need to know is what the boundary is and the date of that event, and I can then create that custom audience. We can also create audiences based on the relocation data that Evelina went into. I actually love this idea of like somebody who moves to a new market. They are kind of a bit of a tourist in their city those first few months. They're not a local expert, and they're probably very apt and interested in exploring their new city, exploring the new cities and cultural attractions. So it's a great opportunity to educate them with advertisements on what they should be doing in their new city. And the last example that we've done recently is actually encouraging people to visit to go to like a home football game. So let's take USC, for example. They're going to be playing Oregon State on September 25th. So USC might be saying, hey, let's try and get people from Oregon State to travel to that football game here. So what we can do is create an audience of people who live in Corvallis and that are sports fans. Maybe we saw them at the stadiums for the previous games, either this year or last year. Maybe they have sports apps on their phones. Maybe they go to sports bars. We see them frequently. We can show them ads for the upcoming USC Oregon State game and try and encourage them to travel down for the game. So then we'll serve them the ads, and then we want to see obviously if they show up at that game. Okay, so we've talked about audiences. Now we're ready to talk about how we serve them ads. Okay, so this is just the example that Evan had with this particular data set, but we can take any data set that you're utilizing and create a custom audience from that. And so those device IDs are mobile ad IDs. And that ID is actually consistent across all the apps that a user has on their phone. So once we have the ad ID, great. Now we can look at what apps do we see them on and serve them advertisements. That's one way we can activate. We can also convert those ad IDs into IP addresses. So if you or your marketing vendor is wanting to run advertising on like connected TV, for example, or on display where the mobile ad ID does not exist, we can convert it to essentially a home IP address that allows you to still serve ads to that custom audience. And then there's one more way that you can, thank you, that we can push audiences, and that's to Facebook. So for those of you who are expert social media advertising experts, then you probably already know that within Facebook's platform, you can target based on interests and demographics. However, there's also the ability to create custom audiences, and you can do that with the mobile ad IDs. So either we can use the data sets that you already have, or in this example, you can tell me, hey, Laura, these are the markets that we know we want to target. We want residents of Denver, but we want people who've also visited, Disneyland or whatever point of interest it might be. We can combine those two sets, create that custom audience, send it to you, you serve ads to them on Facebook. Everyone's happy. Okay, so we've got audiences, we've served them ads, and then most importantly, we want to know if they were actually effective or not. So did someone see an ad and then show up in my location? We can help with that. So this is essentially measurement for any digital advertising. So that includes your website. So if there's a website for a particular destination, you want to understand, okay, do people come to our website and then visit our location? Yes or no? We can help answer that question. So it's all pixel based. We provide you with a pixel, and we can provide as many as you want, broken out by placement, tactic, whatever it may be, audience. And then you can place it on websites and mobile in-app, mobile web, connected TV, like I mentioned. And then once that pixel is firing, we're basically capturing all the people who are exposed to the ad. Then we just need to know what we're measuring against. So either you want to measure, did people show up in the destination, or did they show up at that USC football game? So once we know what we're measuring to, then we can create the report. And that's where we'll show you who was exposed versus who actually ended up in the location, where did they come from, days of week that they visited. You can really have as many locations as you want, and help you understand how effective the advertising was and compare that against all the tactics. So that's sort of the full picture.
That's awesome, Laura and Evelina. And I have this sort of slide to summarize what kind of insights we provide, but clearly I missed some points on here based on what we just went through. And, even with Evelina's relocation data set, understanding people who live in a certain area, where are they moving to, where are they moving from, not just where tourists are coming from, to what Laura reviewed, which is we have pretty robust capabilities around advertising, audience creation, attribution services. A lot of them are both pretty technical and complicated, but a lot of them deliver pretty robust solutions that leverage a lot of the data sets that some of our partners are already getting. So I should expand upon these three things that summarize essentially what our company does in a nutshell. But I really appreciate everyone listening to kind of where we've come from with our data sets and what we're working on in very near future. In the future, in the future, didn't mean to put a pun on the word, but it's true. It's really truthful. We're working on so many cool innovations at our company, and what you just saw is scratching the surface. And a lot of what you just saw is available literally right now. So I encourage you to reach out, to ask questions, honestly, and to learn a little bit more about our offering solutions. I've put our names and emails on here. You can visit near.com to learn more. We have a lot of white papers, documentations. I can say these slides, anything you need, but we're really proud to partner with TTRA and honestly many capacities. We love providing an in-depth understanding of mobile location data. We have access to almost the largest store of mobile location data in the world. We have unique ways of understanding how to leverage it, how it's changing, and what we can do with it in the future to help destinations domestically and internationally. So thanks everyone for your time. I see we have one chat. I don't know if it's a question or not. I'll have to check it out. But either way, if you do have questions, let us know. Because the device at the individual level, can you see where people are moving to? So that's on this slide. The answer is yes. let me show you. This is a really, really cool data set. So I know we didn't show an example of a data set, but you literally see on the device level, people who lived in San Francisco, where do they live now? People who live in San Francisco, where did they live previously on the device level? And you can see all the places they may have moved to along the way. And so this isn't just about a snapshot in the past, let's say 30 days. This can be looking at the past 2 years of people moving to or from, as we kind of go through what's happening right now. This is also interesting. I live in Boston, and about 200,000 college students moved here August into September. So again, understanding these people moving here, identifying those devices, and to Laura's credit sort of point here, building audiences out of these devices and serving them ads. We have over 200,000 new college students here in Boston, identifying people that just moved to this city, sending them ads about the attractions, getting a city pass, and participating in restaurant week. There's a lot of marketing messages they'll need, even though they're just they're a different type of tourist, if you will. Let's go through some of these. So thank you for the question. How are you delivering all of these insights? Is it through a dashboard, deliver raw data sets? We do a little bit of both. So we have unique ways of working in this marketplace. We do have access to raw data. We realize most organizations either don't have the capabilities, or sometimes more importantly, don't have the time to work with raw data sets. So there's a lot of other vendors that we work with in the travel and tourism space that can leverage our services. Laura, through advertising and attribution, almost exclusively works with other vendors, helping us productize what we do in the space of advertising and attribution. What we do with the world of data, we love working with these other vendors and helping them augment their current products, their current solutions that they offer their clients. So I definitely encourage you, you probably work with a slew of different research agencies or marketing agencies. Definitely reach out to them. You can most likely access everything of what we showed you through them in a very turnkey way, or reach out to us if you'd like to learn more about our raw data sets and what goes behind those. So it's kind of, the answer to the question is both things, basically, Maria, on that. Are you able to provide data at a neighborhood polygon level, such as the downtown or up-down area? And the general understanding of our data is that we already have all of this data. There's nothing we need to do to go out and get it. So as long as we draw these polygons, if you will, like this is an example of a polygon on the right. That's literally a polygon I drew on the right, which is a parade route. That could be downtown or uptown. It's literally just telling us we just want to look at devices in this area. And we work with partners that literally put 300, 400, over 1,000 points of interest in their city, their state. We just are launching this month with another country in Europe that has about 1,000 points of interest that they're looking at. Sometimes they don't care about looking at the individual point of interest level. They want to aggregate them. So they don't care if someone went to museum X or Y. To Laura's point, they want to know if they went to museums or cultural attractions while visiting this area, and which origin market is more likely to visit a cultural attraction versus a retail type of destination. So we can use indexes. So you're not looking at every single one of the 800 points of interest or 1,000 points of interest. You're looking at categories of them, which is fun. What is the tool used to convert data to an insight? So to convert data into an insight, if I understand the question correctly, there's a lot of different tools. This is the most basic tool, which is Excel and doing pivot tables on here. That's the most basic tool. That does not work very well when you're dealing with larger volumes of data. So a lot of our partners use Tableau, Power BI, ArcGIS. There's a slew of softwares out there that one can leverage for larger and vaster amounts of data with that. And then some of our vendor partners we work with have their own custom dashboard solutions to turn raw data into insights, especially when you're looking at hundreds of locations around a city or a state. If a person changed a phone at some point, does this person's location data have a break? So 2 ways I'll answer this question. If a person, let's say a Japanese person lands in America and changes the SIM card on their phone, does not change anything about their phone. They're still from Japan. We still have all of that mobile location data because the device ID in column B is attached to the phone. Now, I've had this phone for about 3-4 years, I believe. The new iPhone, I think it was announced today. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely getting that new iPhone when it comes out. I cannot wait. I have a baby due in December. I need to take lots of baby pictures. So when I give this phone away and get a new phone, my device ID will change and it will look like a new phone. However, I'll still be living in the same place, doing the same things. So you won't necessarily be registering me as a repeat visitor at that part. However, I'll still be exhibiting the same behavior. Near is working on another solution around that. This is Carbon. We have another product called Proxima, which actually is able to stitch together a lot of these information into this unique identifier to help understand someone is more than just the one device ID on their phone. So that might end up being a presentation in itself because it's an amazing process. We have a patent that's been fully issued around it. And Proxima is a great way to kind of stitch different touch points of an individual together on that. So I'll save that for another time. It's a complicated one. Is there a standard for establishing whether a traveler is passing through or just visiting? Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. We look at either dwell time, if it's a point of interest, the amount of minutes someone, let's say, is at an attraction, or the length of stay, if it was a destination. No matter how many times we've skinned this cat, it's been different for each destination. But some standard ones is if someone's visiting a point of interest, oftentimes we want to make sure that they were there for 30 minutes, depending on the point of interest. If it's an enclosed building, let's say like a museum with a ticketed entrance or a baseball game, we know they were in there. You may want to qualify on the amount of time they spend at that point of interest, but it's pretty obvious if you went to a baseball game, you're in the stadium during the time of the baseball game. For cities, though, or states or larger areas, we use length of stay. And this depends very much on that destination. Oftentimes we look at a minimum of 4 hours a device needs to be in that location, but it really depends on the location. Sometimes we look for day trippers from certain regions. They want to look at an hour, even 30 minutes. Depends on where they're coming from. For overnighters, they want to look at longer than 4 hours. But absolutely, that's why what's neat about this data set right here is that column U right there. We can literally see how much time each of these devices have spent in Memphis to help decide and qualify them as a visitor, as opposed to just passing through. In discussion with estimating visitor volume, we are building a panel with a high level of observability. I'm going to pass this over to Evelina, who's more of an expert in this subject, but I will read the question. My biggest question about using mobile data for volume is the issue of skews. Observability seems like it may skew the data. What controls are you putting in place to help ensure representativeness of the data? And representativeness is pretty important for us. So I'll pass it over to Evelina.
Oh, thanks, Evan, and thank you for that question. So important, which is why we have observability as a variable, but it isn't just the only variable because it's not the only variable that's being used. So that is one variable that we have. Our panels have been built for allowing us to control for varied volumes and methodologies of our incoming data. And it's been trained on panels that correspond with ground truth foot traffic counts. So it's not only on observability, we're also looking at ground truth data, so other data sources to help train our estimator to do those estimations. And then after that, we are also looking at how representative our data is. So we want to be able to do this for the whole entire world, of course, for every country. But but in order to even begin that process, the first thing we look at is whether our data is representative of the population and the demographics of that population. So we have gone through that exercise before the data, and as well as looking at our panels and making sure that they are representative of the population. Our key countries that we're looking at for just generally doing our estimator is currently in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. We're going to be expanding that, of course, but those are the key countries that we're looking at right now.
And if you're curious about the demographic representatives of our both domestic and international access to data, we have some awesome white papers. We've done the studies on the representatives of our data. I encourage anyone you're working with in the world of mobile location data to have done these studies, because as we know, biases exist out there, and it's important for you to understand what those are. A question about estimating spend. Our company does not collect right now credit card data. A lot of the vendors we work with do, though. They will take our data and combine it with VisaView data to help understand spend and essentially put dollar signs to visitation. So it's a pretty straightforward practice that we've seen in the tourism space, but our company lives and breathes mobile location data. That's the data source that we provide. Oh, this is a good question. Two businesses are on top of each other, essentially, and I'll kind of refer back to here. So if a business is on top of each other, how do we know which business they visit? And it's a great question, because right now you see C and D, latitude and longitude. You don't see verticality. And the truth is, we don't know what business that they visited. So if they went to the 7-Eleven at the bottom of an office tower, we don't necessarily know if they went to 7-Eleven or they went in the office tower. We don't know if they're on the 4th floor or the 20th floor of that building. And that's a general thing with mobile location data. That's just the reality of having no verticality yet in the data. There are some apps we anticipate will be coming out with verticality, because it's more useful to have verticality in those apps in the future. But for the mainstream apps, it's not very useful or needed to have verticality in with there. So you can't actually see what floor people are on. That office building example, though, we can look at who works at that office tower, who's visiting that office tower, the time of day they're going. So there are some ways to kind of skin that cat and methodologies we can take to look at visitors to a certain location like that. But in general, we only get the latitude and longitude of a visitor. Wow, I think that's it for questions. Those were some great questions. And again, I'm gonna just go to the end here really quick and throw our email addresses up there so you can reach out and get any white papers, any detailed methodologies, a copy of this presentation, would you like? But yeah, I thank you so much, Kelsey, Simon, Laura, Evelina, for joining me. Kathy, thank you for TTRA for putting this on. We really enjoyed it. Yeah, look forward to honestly just providing more insights to TTRA as we go into Q4 and next year. There's a lot to be excited about in the world of tourism research. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you, everybody.
to the NEAR team. We appreciate it.